Okay, so today we are talking about, well, we're actually talking about this all week, and that is how business problems can camouflage really personal issues instead of just being business problems. A lot of times we see that with a lot of folks, and I'm just going to move this just a tad, and it's just, it's hard to tell which is which. Do I continue to have an income problem every month because I'm not doing the right steps? Or am I in my own way? And really, that is the first barrier. Then the right steps come for you. And so we talked a little bit about this last month in our March monthly training. We're doing monthly trainings every month now. And that was all about pricing. So I really concentrated on what it was doing about money. But there is a real follow through thread on what really goes on for a lot of people that really were camouflaging personal issues. And the reason this has always come up is because we see these folks that look like they have easily built $1 million business, a multi-million-dollar business, 8 figures, 9 figures. And we hear about that all the time. And some of us want to be maybe not as big, but you definitely want to get past where we're at. I always hate to tell folks that $100,000 can feel like entrepreneurial poverty after you pay taxes and expenses and you try to pay yourself a salary and a small team or one VA, and it becomes difficult. But business problems do camouflage personal issues, and that's really a common thread around high achievers, that they had to get past themselves to be able to get where they wanted to go, and they had to make that choice. And so that's the topic we're going to be exploring all week. We're going to explore certain areas that really show up as you get closer and closer to your goal or your next goal, on how you want to build your business, not only from a financial standpoint, a team standpoint, but really what makes you happy, what makes you have success, and success that's well lived, because that's really what we're all looking for. And folks that make that kind of money, if you interview them, the common thread is, I had to change. And if you ask what got you to $1 million, I've been on enough podcasts and panels. When that question comes up, the first thing those folks say is that they had to change. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't a shiny object. It wasn't the next new technique. It was them. And so here we go. And we're going to just kind of give you an overbroad feeling of what we're going to be doing. And the first thing I always forget to do, because it is one of my personal issues, is the visibility issue. And I always want to introduce myself and keep it condensed, because who wants to hear everything about me? That's kind of the thought I had, because invisibility was actually a great tool when I was growing up, because we used to call ourselves the loud family. Well, that was because we were chaotic and there was a lot of fighting going on in our family. So being invisible was a great tool, and you could, I snuck around to get some of the things I needed in life. So my folks wouldn't know, because it was easier than fighting with them. And that's really where that started for me. And probably, as you hear some of my progression in my life and how I got to today, it's really the thing that has pushed me forward, because usually it's the one thing that you have hung on to that worked when you were young, but no longer works as an adult, and definitely no longer works when you're an entrepreneur. And in this type of market, visibility, building your own platform, being known as the expert is really important, because that's how people find you. That's how people know about you, whether you're on podcasts, have your own podcast, do speaking gigs in person, online, have a team, a sales team. You still have to be there and be visible and be the leader of yourself, of your business, and as it grows, all the other components that come in. And so we're going to talk in depth about that tomorrow, but in terms of the invisibility piece. But what I want to talk to you about today is that I am going to kind of go through the timeline without boring you in terms of, I came from that chaotic family. I was able to receive a scholarship to go to college. I really wanted to go to college. That really held to me. I took any old job that made me a ton of money, that first job. But then I kind of fell in. Sometimes when you ask the universe does reply. I can remember saying to myself a few years out of college, I really want a job where I have some freedom and I get to be with people. And I had no idea about psychology back then or anything. I just wanted some freedom. I hated going to the office, being there at 8:00 every day. I felt like I was hemmed in. It just wasn't for me. And so lo and behold, the only job I could find when I moved to Houston was a sales job. And it was with a chemical company, a Fortune 100 company. And I ended up loving it. I had a company car. I had a 5-state territory. Pretty much, I was an entrepreneur within a Fortune 100 company. My boss was in Chicago, the big boss. The other boss was maybe 25 miles away, but he was getting ready to retire. He didn't want to train me. He didn't want to do anything. He would he would answer any question. He did not try to sabotage me, but he just wanted to play golf and go out to lunch. I mean, Art was really at that point in his life, and he had a lot of knowledge. And if I asked a lot of questions, he answered every single one of them. And he was good that way. He just wasn't going to go on the road. He wasn't going to train me in sales. Wasn't going to do anything. But that gave me an opportunity to actually do the things that I asked for. I had a lot of freedom. I worked out of my home before it was popular. I've not been in an office since back then, unless I rented my own space. And, not many people back then worked out of their home. Company car, corporate American Express. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I always loved talking to people. And I eventually learned, if you're curious and you keep asking questions, people are willing to answer them. They may not tell you everything at first until they get to know you, but it turned out to be an area that I was good at, was sales. But the thing I learned really quick is I had to build a relationship with these folks and then figure out how my product actually worked in their, in their manufacturing plant and how that would help them. And then I got tapped to be a sales manager and work in the wine and beer industry to bring a product to that industry. And I got to travel the whole country, talking to wineries, talking to breweries, coming to the different, they test the water at breweries, they test the water, they test the beer at different stages. And I will tell you a funny story. The first time someone asked me to do that, they said, you really do need to get an idea of how we actually manufacture beer for us to help you see whether that is going to be a viable product. And so it was 10 o'clock in the morning, and they showed me how to taste test the water, because you don't swallow anything. Taste test the beer at different parts of the brewery process. And by 10:30, they were going back to work, and I had to go back to the hotel because it went to my head. I must have swallowed a little bit here and there, but they were kind. They made sure I got a cab. And from then on, I became an expert on how to taste test beer along the brewing process. And, spent 8 years in that job and really, again, had all the things I had asked for. But, life changes. And I had a life change. I went through a divorce and I decided if I was going through a divorce, I was going to change my business. And I was going to go actually, I'm a little ahead of myself. Before I went through the divorce, I decided when, after 8 years, I was actually trying to get pregnant and I was having a lot of infertility problems, and decided I wanted a job I could control a little bit more. And someone said to me, you know what, you'd be good as a therapist. And here's the thing, I didn't even know. I'd never taken a psychology course. I really didn't understand psychology. I had no clue what that was, but I did some research. I found out the University of Houston had this marriage and family therapy program, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I know a lot about chaotic families. Boy, I am an expert. I grew up in one. And they took 20 out of maybe 250 applications. And so I didn't have any of the qualifications. But what I did do, you have to have an application process. You have to describe why, and then you come to a group interview. And what I just said was how family life can impact your business life, because I had seen that with my travel and my marriage. I had seen it with my colleagues, especially those that had small children. And on that basis, I got accepted into a program. I was one of 20 out of 250 applications. I spent 17 years as a therapist. So that's where my psychology background comes in. I worked with individuals. I also had, part of my practice was with kids, but the majority of it, 50% of it, were couples and men. And some of the same things entrepreneurs struggle with, couples struggle with too: communication, money, asking for what they want, all those things are the same thing. But during that time, I also got to do some consulting for Boeing and NASA and some of the engineering firms with difficult leaders and managers in their companies. And that was really great experience. And then at that point, I had a life change and decided to do this current business I have now. But what it's led me to do is not just use my psychology background, because what I found were our entrepreneurs are actually even more difficult to work with than couples that are on the brink of divorce. Entrepreneurs, there are several kinds of entrepreneurs, but for the majority, they're those that struggle, work hard enough, have nothing to show for it, and keep going and keep going and keep going. And 10 years later, still barely are making any money. But, the concept of their business, they love. They definitely don't want to go back into the corporate space, but they're really not making what they need to make to be able to breathe. No one's asking anyone to make $1 million, but by 10 years, you should be over the 100,000, 200,000 mark if you have a viable business, or else there's got to be other things, because these folks are also buying program after program, coach after coach, and nothing's sticking. So that's kind of, 45% of the entrepreneurs, and none of the other entrepreneurs that actually go from one type of business to the next because the first one didn't work. And they don't actually spend enough time developing their business, or they pick something that is, they didn't think it through. It's not viable. Who's going to pay for that? I always hate to ask somebody, but who's really going to pay for that? And because there are some business fundamentals, no matter who you are, they're all the same for all of us. And then there's like the 10 to 20% of folks, 15% of folks that get over 100,000, 200,000, the 5%, they go on to $1 million a year. But so many are stuck below, and they keep buying the next thing, or they don't do what they're being asked to do, because there are some things that are not fun that you have to have in your business fundamentally. And so they're always stuck, and it's always some of them, it's always someone else's fault, or they just need the next shiny object, or the next coaching program, or the next thing, or I'll just work hard and then I'll get there. And it just doesn't happen. And so, and actually, they're a lot like my couples clients I used to have in psychology in my practice, because how many people do you know that was married for a long time but not happy, and they start either ignoring everything like some entrepreneurs, or they're struggle, and but they still say stay married, and it's just a parallel of what's really going on. So as I got more working with entrepreneurs and small to medium companies, what happened was I was using my psychology more. I came into the business just using my sales skills, and my money skills and my psychology skill. But psychology was just like, oh, that's great. You just happened to get that. But the more time that I've spent in this business in the last 8 years, what I noticed, there were still even more gaps that psychology just couldn't answer alone. That human potential market, positive psychology, whatever you're into, the energetics, energetics are so important also. And so the next piece of work that I brought into my work was systemic work. Now, systemic work, when I say it, a lot of people think it is the back end of your business. It is not the back end of your business, but systems are important. So I want to say that they're very, very important. Your automation, your website, your how you schedule your social media, anything that's going on like that. But systemic work is all about the energy that we pull in from other people and things that we take in as our own. And when it's not our own, it causes us problems. So let me give you an example. A great example would be that you're loyal to your mother unconsciously, and she never had a job or a business, and your success, you don't want that much success because then it would go against a mom. And so you keep failing on your success. And really, it's an unconscious thing, and mom doesn't know, and you don't know. And then when we figure that out, we can uncommit from that loyalty tie. So there's a lot of things we bring in generationally, and it comes in through our energy between the generations, your people at work, your people in your business, your folks at home. And that really is such a key piece because it's not linear. And the energetics and the systemic way, the way we organize ourselves within a company or a family intertwine. And that's why I always say the personal's the professional, professional's the personal. And so I went ahead. I love that work because it answered the next layer for me, and how I could use it in my work with my clients. Still offering, business building, sales, but just getting more and more into the transformation of who they are so they can be the person they're meant to be in their business. And so now my work has taken me. I just finished a weekend workshop in the neuroscience and epigenetics. I said it right. I have a hard time with that word, and how that really affects us. And again, it's more how our brain thinks and how our heart feels and how they work together, thinking and feeling and actions. I mean, that's your personality. How you think, how you feel, and how you act is your personality. And how we get stuck in some of those areas, and how neuroscience has now shown us how we can get unstuck along with psychology and along with the systemic work, because that's the interesting piece. They all work hand in hand. And so I'm so looking forward to the advanced certification that I'll be doing, because it answers even some more questions, because there is no reason in my book for 80% of the folks that have a business for them to be struggling. And it comes down to those business problems. Most of them are personal issues. They're either psychological issues, systemic issues. They're your brain and your feelings are not coherent, and then your actions become useless because your brain and your feelings are not working well together. And so it all starts to unfold. And so that's why I got some feedback from my last monthly training that that folks wanted to expand what I was talking about when I mentioned it. And so that's what we're going to do this week. And it really shows up when you think about all of us have hired coaches, we've bought programs, we have bought courses. So we hire those millionaires, those 7-figure entrepreneurs, because we've seen their success. I've done it myself. I did 3 years in a high-end mastermind when I first got into this business, because I really didn't even know the coaching world. I'd been a therapist for so long. I knew coaching was out there, but I didn't know anyone that was a coach, and I really didn't know how it worked, and how you just say you're a coach and and now you can fix people. I mean, I had some really inconsistent ways of thinking about coaching until I decided that I was going to sell my private practice and I was going to take all my experience and come into this business that I have now, and ended up going to some events and really looking at this world. It's so different than being a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist. And so I hired some of those 7-figure entrepreneurs because they must know what they're doing, right? They got there. They must know what they're doing. I've all done that. Some of the programs are great, some not so great. But the thing is, we all have a lesson to learn when we do those things, especially when it doesn't work out and looking back. And so most of the programs that I entered at first were very transactional. How to get a speaking gig, how to get people to call so you can sell your program to them. I mean, a lot of us have done that. And that, it's still part of a business. It's the transactional part of your business. And, but I personally wasn't changing. I was just learning how coaching is done. And then after a while, some of them actually saw me as an asset for them. And I have contracted with some of them and have worked for some of them. For the last 5 or 6 years, I have done some of back of the room sales for folks when we had live events. I've done it now virtually. I've gone in when they've had trouble with their sales team and done some consulting. And so I got to see a different side of that. I bought from them first. I've contracted with them along with the business I was building, and I got to see the back end and got to know them more on a personal level and interviewed them and how, what was different for them. How did they get past 100, 500,000 a year and onto $1 million? And then also, some of them are my clients now. I have folks that I'm taking to $500,000, now $500,000 to $1 million, but the $1 million entrepreneurs still hire me now more as a consultant because they know it is the personal work that is the glue that keeps it all together, whether it's for them themselves, their partners, their spouses. Who would have known my couples therapy would come back in the entrepreneurial space, and it has. And so periodically they hire me and they become my clients for a while for all the things that my other clients that are not making that kind of money don't hire me for. And yet, the common thread when you start asking them, I've been on podcasts and this question gets asked and panels, and then personally is, what is the thing? What are the common traits or the common things you did that helped you get over to that $1 million mark? And the first thing they said was, I had to change, but I had to change into the person that I am really here to be, not some other personality, but a really enhanced version of who they are. And they had to let go of things that didn't matter to them anymore. Or maybe it mattered, but they knew they couldn't pay attention to it at this point in time, or they had to hire for that, whatever. But once you make a decision to step into who you are at the highest level, then the path to success, your definition of success, and not apologizing for it, becomes more apparent. And that's the transformational work that is so important for everyone to get past. So that's the first thing they'll say. The second thing they'll tell you is that they had to look at money and sales differently. And I've always looked at money and sales differently because just the way I fell into the sales job, manager's job I had for 8 years. And I don't say I fell into it. I did earn the promotion, but how I took the job for sales in terms of, because there were no other jobs for me when I came to Houston. My degree was a textile chemistry degree. I'd worked in a plant before. This is oil and gas territory, and it just wasn't anything. And so I looked in the paper. Back then, you looked in the paper, or you had a recruiter. You called a recruiter, and I said, "Where are all the jobs? Where are all the jobs?" And all they were sales jobs. And I just said to myself, "That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a sales job," and I did. But actually, it turned out it was a key turning point for me in my career. And I probably could not do my business so well now if I hadn't had that, along with all my psychology experience and all the other things I'm adding now. Not because I think I keep needing more certifications. I love to learn. And if there's something I can learn for myself and for my clients, why not? I just do it. But I don't do it, and I don't want you to do it just based on, oh, if I just get this certification, I'll have more clients. That's not what I'm talking about. You got to love it, and you've got to embed it into who you are. So first was they made a choice to be their highest level self. That is not easy. That is not easy, because remember what I said, how we think, how we feel, and how we act are all tied together. And so all of those have to start changing in certain areas for you to be a CEO of $1 million business or more. And the second thing was they started to look at money and sales differently. The third thing, they had to, I want to say this in a way that is not, it's not brutal, but I'll just say it short and then I'll explain. They had to let go of people that no longer needed to be in their life. And that happens all the time. I'll give you an example from myself. When I went through my divorce, I had the whole slew of girlfriends that was tied to our art, textile art, design, because that's what I do as a hobby, and I love it. It's always been part of my life. It comes from my grandmother. Thoroughly enjoy it. And they were all married, and all of a sudden I wasn't. And somehow I was different, and I was different. And I was changing, because that experience changes you. And it's not that they said, oh, we don't want Lorianne anymore. Or I said, oh, I can't hang out with them anymore. It was never anything like that. It just slowly, over the first 18 months, it just stopped. And when I see them, we still say hi and hug, but they're not in my life like they used to be. And so that is not unusual. And that's what I meant by that third comment. You change. Some people come with you. Some people are okay with it, but they don't want to come with you as much. And some people just float away. So those top three things actually are the hardest pieces, common traits. And then there are 5 altogether. And then the fourth one is the invisibility piece. And the fifth one is the leadership piece. And not having leadership skills, but being a leader. There is a difference. And there's tons of leadership coaches out there, and they teach all these skills, and they're important to have. So I do think on some level, leadership skills should be taught, but embodying and being a leader at a certain level is not for the faint of heart. And that also is a major, major component. So all those 5 traits. And the interesting piece is the visibility piece turns out to be the easiest when you do the other 4. But for me, I thought it would be real hard. And so here I am on Instagram, Facebook, and Zoom. Who would have known I would do that just even 3 years ago? Because if the pandemic hadn't happened, it has forced me to do the one thing I don't particularly care to do. I used to say, oh, it's just not me. No, it's just not me, is because still had some of those issues for my own family. I love to write. I would prefer to write and write an article, write a book, and which I've done those things, and I've got another book coming out. But my point is, usually the thing that really stops you is the thing you have to teach or be part of your program. And so we're going to cover all of those traits in depth. And so we're going to do visibility tomorrow in depth. We're going to then do, we're going to talk about money and sales. I did a lot about that last month, but I'm just going to touch on it again. And we'll cover all the others up to leadership on Thursday. And then on Friday, we're going to tie it all together. So that is kind of the plan for that. And so I'm going to just kind of talk a little bit in general about change and transformation and how that shows up in a business problem. So if you're not having clients, it could be because of the technical pieces of your don't have enough lead generation. That is so true. So many people don't do lead generation. It is the one thing, really a frustration when I first started in this business talking about sales and sales psychology, is that I can teach someone all day around how to make money, but if they don't have that lead generation, they don't have anyone to talk to, they don't have anyone that's following them on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, whatever they're doing. But, you know, the lead generation piece is also a psychological piece and a systemic piece. And what that means is you are not doing the one thing that will help you have consistent income. And I hear all the time, because I'm too busy. Yet it is the one thing that will help you, and you won't do it. So if that is you, what I want to say to you right now, all of you, is this, is start asking yourself why. Not why from a tactical standpoint, but why am I not doing this? Go to bed tonight. Before you go to bed, ask yourself, what is the most important question I need to ask about why I'm not doing this? Or anything that you know right up front, consciously, that you know you're stuck on, and you keep trying to either buy a program or learn new things or do the next thing on the one thing that would get you over the hump in your business. And lead generation is usually one of them. And it's a real underlying psychological, systemic stuckness in a lot of people's bodies. Is exactly, because sometimes I can see someone when I talk about it, they just, you know, physically go, I just can't. I just can't. And yet it's not a simple thing to do. It's a simple concept to understand. But all you need is one way of getting clients for a while. And when that no longer works, you've got a couple more you can try, but you should have 1 to 3 ways, one major one. So that's just, I don't want to go off on that, but that's an example. It's in your body. There's some feeling around this that is driving your thinking and your actions. And that's usually what happens is out of the 3 thinking, feeling, actions, there's one thing that's holding you back. It's a feeling. And then if it's a feeling and you have resistance to it, it's because you've got faulty thinking about it, and you've got faulty action. And so they all have to line up. That's why that's why these problems camouflage personal issues, especially if you keep buying. And most people I meet keep wanting to get that next best coach and think the other coach just didn't have it in them. And, you know, maybe for you that was true, but everyone is, you know, someone has always something usual that they can sell and that can help you get to the next step. But it's always a tactical piece or a technique piece. And we're not just tacticals or techniques. You know, there's just no more excuse of you not knowing information out there because of Google. You can find everything. You can get on YouTube. You know, when I became the sole owner of my home, which I was dead set on keeping and proving to everyone that I was going to be able to handle this house when everyone else told me, including my attorney, to sell it. But I love this home and I was going to keep it. And I will sell it someday when it's right for me. But I had to learn some things about repair. I never bothered about that. And at the beginning, when I didn't have enough money, boy, can you learn a lot on YouTube. Same thing for business. You can learn a lot on YouTube about what you need from the tactical and the technical pieces. It's how you put it together and how you take everything and intertwine it in such a way that you can cause you to have a transformation, a change in a certain area. So that is really in a nutshell what we're going to move on and do starting on tomorrow, talking about visibility and change, and then how to think about money differently and change. And we'll do a couple topics on Wednesday, and we'll do the leadership piece on Thursday and tie it all together. And so it's important that I would suggest that you make a list of those things you are having business problems with, and then how they may reflect in your personal issues. If you just had to ask that question and to be honest with yourself, and bring them with you tomorrow. And we are going to do some deep dive in being visible, being an expert, being known, and how you can do that for yourself.